Walkie 1. We got some kids trapped here on the second floor. We need more firefighters. This is Walkie 1. We're coming down with the kids. We need that ambulance right away.
Your worst nightmare. A child, perhaps your child, terribly burned or scalded in yet another senseless accident. In this room, a life hangs in precarious balance. The outcome rests in the hands of a team of men and women who have shifted the odds in favor of this little girl and are working a medical miracle. Hello, I'm McLean Stevenson. The little girl in the operating room in there is burned over 90% of her body. 5 years ago, she almost certainly would have died. But recent advances in treatment at Shrine Burn Institutes, such as the one on the campus at the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, have dramatically increased the chances of survival of a massive burn victim.
Now almost any child who comes into our institute, no matter how large the burn is, has a very good chance of living, of surviving.
Dr. Herndon has treated countless burn victims. He is a pioneer in the development of the latest burn technology.
There have been several major advances in the treatment of burns over the last 5 to 10 years, which have decreased mortality tremendously. Number one is understanding how to replace the tremendous amount of fluid that is lost right after the burn injury happens. One of the major reasons for the death of burn victims in the past was that they lost their outer armor. Fluid leaked out, and normal bacteria in the environment could get directly into the bloodstream, causing life-threatening infections. We now know not only how to replace the fluid that is lost, but exactly what to replace it with, how much and at what rate. This understanding has almost eliminated totally mortality due to shock after burns. The second major advance is better treatment of infections. Use of topical creams over the burn wound and the appropriate use of the many intravenous antibiotics that are now available. But even more important than the replacement of fluids and the prevention of infection by antibiotics has been an understanding of how to support what we call a hypermetabolic response to trauma. This response elevates body temperature by 2 or 3 degrees, increases the heart rate by as much as 3 times, and utilizes calories at 3 or 4 times the normal rate. In the past, massive burn victims literally starved to death because they couldn't be fed fast enough. The fourth and most important advance, and the one that we at Shriners Burns Institute are concentrating on the most, is early surgical removal of the burn tissue and replacement of that tissue with skin. Skin from healthy donor sites on the victim, skin from cultures grown from the victim's tissue, and skin from cadavers, used fresh or stored and frozen. This cadaver skin is used as a temporary covering to reduce infection and fluid loss.
I think the trick is to excise all the burn wound, the entire burn area within the first 72 hours before the dead tissues starts autolysing, getting contaminated with bacteria, and those products starts getting absorption and the patient starts getting toxic.
What we do in the operating room is we remove the dead tissue and we take what little bit of living tissue there is, usually a small area in the groin, perhaps a small area underneath the armpit that has been clutched to the side, or a small area of the scalp where the hair was long enough to protect it briefly from that flame injury. We take that small piece of skin and we use a special machine that makes it like a fishnet. We put certain size holes in this small piece of normal skin so that it can be stretched 4 to 6 to 12 times the original size.
Our immediate goals and the research that we're doing deals primarily with growing skin, and this is taking skin from burn patients, expanding it in tissue culture, and then applying it over the burned wound. And this allows us to get expansions of about 50 times the initial surface area of the skin that is taken.
A great resource available to the Galveston Shriners is the University of Texas Medical Branch, which houses 7 working hospitals, in addition to several colleges and leading-edge research facilities. The university provides massive quantities of blood, skin from cadavers, and a constant flow of human resources to aid the Institute in its efforts.
We have decreased the rate of burn wound infection. We have decreased the rate of death and tremendously decreased the amount of pain associated with the daily dressing changes and previous kinds of treatment these children received.
Pain, the burn victim's constant companion, moment to moment, hour after hour, for months on end. Until the very recent advances in surgical technique developed in Galveston and elsewhere, a particularly torturous process called debriding was used to remove the burned tissue. The patient's skin was literally picked off piece by piece, twice daily over a period of months. The horrifying intensity of those tubbing sessions is sometimes the only real memory of the hospitalization that older burn victims have.
It used to be a very fearful process, a very painful process for the patients. Since early excision, when the skin is taken off surgically, then the patients don't have to go to tubbing as much and for as long of a time. Therefore, they have less trauma with being fearful of the tubs, and they also have less pain.
It's changed it a lot, and it's made the nursing job much easier, because prior to that, when the nurses were really giving the patients pain day in and day out, and they still are, but not to the extent they want, the nursing job was much more difficult.
Tubbing is used much less frequently now, usually once a week, and the gruesome process of debriding is accomplished surgically while the patient is under anesthesia. But the lessening of pain is not the only benefit.
I've also noticed that there is a shorter hospitalization time. What this means is that in rehabilitation, there's more emphasis for the occupational therapists and physical therapists to see the patients early in their hospitalization, to increase their strength so that they'll be able to walk and go home when their wounds are healed.
Let's go see the people outside. Look, come on, come on.
Courageous, every one of these children, heroic survivors who comply with difficult, painful demands of those who would heal them and prepare them to take their place in the world again.
Push one, now push this one.
Physical therapy begins almost as soon as they are out of the operating room and continues for a lifetime. Sometimes the ones who are helping must seem like torturers, especially to the very young.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
So take the ball, put it in his lap, and then see if Mikey will hit it back to you.
Parents are involved in the process early in the hospitalization to soothe the children and to train the parents for the years of continuing therapy at home. So, the surgeons and researchers here in Galveston and at other burn centers are saving lives that were once lost. The nurses and the therapists are helping to complete the recovery in a far less painful and a faster way. But a disturbing question still remains. What quality of life can these children have to look forward to?
Now, many people can be kept alive, but we wonder what kind of a life is it if one is totally rejected, always in agony, and horrendously handicapped. And I think we have this in many areas of medicine, this question, what are we doing?
Jamie Ford, Jeremy Peck, Teresa Armstrong.
In an effort to find an answer, Shriners Burn Institute in Galveston conducted an unprecedented two-day conference in June 1985. 12 children who had survived greater than 80% total body surface area burns were brought to the Institute for an intensive physical and psychological evaluation. Although there have been individual survivors of massive burn injuries in the past, this was the first group of its kind ever assembled. The patients had been out of the hospital anywhere from 2 months to almost 3 years.
Children with burns this large have survived in the past, but only episodically. What we are looking at today are 14 children who have survived burns over 80% of their total body surface, 70% of that being third degree, that have occurred in just the last 2.5 years and been treated at this institution. These are absolutely massive injuries which have never before been survived with any degree of regularity.
The nightmares began in a horrifying array of disaster. An exploding television set, a flaming airliner plunging into a child's backyard, an errant Molotov cocktail hurled into the wrong bedroom. In each instance, a life has been irrevocably altered. These children will never be the same. Modern medicine can save their lives, but it cannot restore them to wholeness. Plastic surgery is limited in its ability to improve such massive scarring. And arms, fingers, noses, and ears that have been burned away are gone forever.
These children have tremendous scars. Once they have sustained this injury, it's the most tremendous trauma one could possibly sustain physically. We can now get them through that acute trauma, but they never look the same.
Okay, now would you like to just touch your toes?
No.
Remarkably, though, the children at the conference all exhibited a tremendous vitality and ability to adapt to their extraordinary circumstances.
Let's not have the water, too fast here. No. Joseph, we're getting everybody wet. There, that's good.
They were asked to perform 12 activities of daily living skills, including locomotion, dressing, eating, and personal hygiene. They were observed by a team of surgeons, physical and occupational therapists, nurses, and psychoanalysts. The results from that study have been published for professional use by others in the medical community. The evaluation of that information will continue for some time, and follow-up studies on these children will provide the answers to many questions which are being asked for the first time.
I think what we're looking for and still don't fully understand is the ways people cope with catastrophe. I don't think we're really so clear. None of the psychiatric ideas really apply. These kids don't have a psychiatric disease. They have suffering due to a catastrophe.
It's a beginning. It's the beginning of a very interesting challenge. You can see from these 2 days, the tools to measure those things have not yet been developed. And that's where we're going to start. We're going to start gathering the tools to measure what it is society is getting and we are giving.
At the same time that the physical testing was taking place, the children were being interviewed by visiting psychiatrist Dr. Norman Bernstein and staff psychotherapist Sylvia Beard. Dr. Bernstein has an international reputation for his work with disfigured patients. Some of his findings have not been encouraging.
They've moved into a whole different pathway of development. They don't develop the way normal people do because they're not in normal situations. The disfigured burn child fundamentally deals with a world that really will not accept him or her and turns away and makes fun and shows the contempt. Then if you add to that the fact that other children don't always treat them well, that they make fun of them, particularly burned children. They call them names. They say, why do you look like a monster? Why do you look like a Martian? Why do you look like a mummy? All of these are phrases that I've heard used many times. And our experience in following up children shows that a large number follow a course into the shadows, that it may not be total social death, but they become more withdrawn, they become shyer, and they have to steel themselves to go out anywhere, and a lot of them just avoid that. They don't want to go shopping by daylight. They don't want to be seen.
Despite the genuine vitality exhibited by these children, There are many unresolved psychological problems that they are left to struggle with. Sleep disorders, deep-seated fears, feelings of rejection, nightmares.
One time I dreamed about my nanny's house and Daddy was a virus. And a couple had a nightmare about a monster trying to get me and I went under the couch.
He's real mad now, okay.
For some of the children, the overriding emotion and a primary source of energy for adaptation is anger.
You're really gonna get him. Oh, you got that pig.
Boom, boy, they are going now. Boom.
Knocked him
Even
over.
the pig got it.
All of them down there.
All of them are down.
Now, since this baby was mad, they're gonna be mad.
I see the baby was mad, now everybody's mad.
That's right.
One of the concerns expressed by the medical and psychiatric staff here at Shriners is that the real test for these kids will be to get through adolescence, a time of trial even for more fortunate youngsters.
We all know how tough teenagers are on each other. We all know how very much body consciousness comes to the fore in adolescence, and with the body changes.
However, the only adolescent in the group seemed to belie these worries. He has a circle of peer friends, including a girlfriend, and has adapted to school life very well.
Do you get down in the dumps sometimes? Mm-hmm.
Well, it's one thing I try to stay away from.
Mm-hmm. Good. So you're generally pretty cheerful?
Yeah.
How is your math now?
I don't like to talk about that.
I see, all right. No, we won't have to talk about that. What's your favorite subject?
Lunch.
Lunch, all right.
There were some survivors of massive burn injuries prior to these new treatments. Since his accident at the age of 16, one young adult has successfully completed college and entered the workforce. He had words of encouragement for other burn victims.
And encourage them not to let fear rob them of something that, that they can do, because fear is one reason why a lot of people fail to even try. And there's no reason for not trying, just because somebody says you can't, or you tell yourself you can't. Like if you can't hold a can of spray paint, like I have a hard time doing it, but I find ways around it, and I still get the job done. And you'll find there's a lot of things that you may not think you can do, but you actually can if you just give a little effort and try.
The child feels about self the way important people like parents, brothers and sisters, playmates feel about him. So therefore, if there are positive, good relationships where the child is cared for, cared about as a human being of value, then the child can begin to pick up again a positive sense of self.
When I was in San Angelo, I stopped by the local hospital, and one of the technicians there, the head technician, thought I could do the job. Well, that was enough to get me started. I said, okay, somebody thinks I can do something besides, sit up there and watch cows.
Here in this supportive environment, it is easy for these children to forget themselves. They have a good time. But what happens when they return to their schools, to the streets, to a society that is not ready for them? Physical beauty. We are drawn to it. We'll pay for it. Want to possess it. Yet in some cases, it is entirely unattainable. Even with the most advanced plastic surgery, now and in the foreseeable future, none of these children will ever be physically beautiful. None will appreciably improve as they grow. They will remain scarred.
One of the major adjustments or obstacles faced by the children is social acceptance as they begin to reconstruct a normal life. This is often made difficult by the fact that they wear for the first several months jobst garments, which are elastic, made to fit garments, which serve to put pressure on the burn scars and thus flatten and smooth the final result of the scars. The garments are often misunderstood by the general population, and they can create anxiety and fear. Children or any person who is disfigured in some way is faced with a major task of attempting to reconstruct an acceptable body image when people have lost very visible body parts, such as noses and ears. It's very difficult to learn to define ourselves as acceptable or normal. In situations where surgery can't be done right away, prostheses such as noses, ears, those sorts of things are often very helpful.
It's just a rewarding thing to know that you've helped the patient with their scarring. It's just a psychological thing. The ears especially are psychological to the patient. Noses also, same thing. Besides being cosmetic, they're functional. The ear will aid your hearing, besides being cosmetic, of course, as I said before. It's also functional, being that it holds your glasses on, or sunglasses. And your nose does the same thing, and it holds your glasses or sunglasses.
Severely burned victims are often stared at, ridiculed, avoided, treated as outcasts because of their physical deformities. The searing pain of rejection often continues indefinitely after the torment of the flames has long faded. We miraculously save these children. Can we let them die a slow social death?
The act of walking into a grocery store makes many heads turn. Everyone reacts in one way or another. The general reaction is one of horror, one of aversion. Society walks away from these children, treats them as if they were freaks.
Certainly someone who has been injured severely, who is visibly scarred, will cause a startle reaction in all of us, because I think it stirs up some real deep sense of our own personal vulnerability. So we first react with a startle, but perhaps people can think about this a bit and re-examine the way we place value in human beings. So
I've had instances where, you know, some kid at one time came up and laughed at me right in my face. You know, just I guess I don't know what his problem was, but it didn't bother me, you know. If he doesn't have anything better to do, he must be more miserable than I am, you know.
As medical advances continue, we will always be confronted with the question, is it in the best interest of the victim to keep them alive? Well, for these heroic survivors, there is no question. You hear the laughter of the little children in the background? That's the answer. The real question is the extent of our responsibility as communities and as individuals to welcome back into our community and into our workforce, and more importantly, into our hearts, these little individuals who are, quote, different, unquote, to see beyond the surface to the qualities within.
Hey, who's this?
Say hi.
Hi, Mikey.
Say hi.
How does it feel to be going home?
Feels great. Very excited.
How long have y'all been here now?
3.5 months.
Whoa.
It's time to go home.
What does this shirt say?
It says Mikey, and it says 90% survivor.
All right. Okay.
Say bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Mikey.